What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment, and I'm going to officially cover tomorrow's spreads real quick, and then I'm going to have a video coming out where, probably tomorrow to be honest, where I cover all of Sunday's over/under spreads, the exact unit amounts, all that stuff. I put that out on my membership channels anyway, so I'll just upload it on here. But I did want to just retouch on because I did my playoff prediction video essentially, but I didn't have the playoff simulator privy, and there's a lot of matchups where I had these teams winning, but wasn't sure exactly what the ramifications meant. And there's some drastic, ramifications to be had if there's just a few switches here as far as teams that are winning and losing. So I'm going to run through real quick. I'm going to just touch on tomorrow's games. For the Steelers-Ravens, I think it makes all the sense in the world for the Steelers to win. I think they have to win, to be honest. If they don't, they're immediately eliminated, which I just don't think makes any sense, especially since the Bills-Dolphins is going to be such a draw. So I really think the Steelers win, and I think they're going to cover. It's at 3 points now. So I like the cover there. I also like the under. Someone brought up on a comment how we're getting a lot of like modern retro classics, and we are, if you look at it, like Philly, Tampa, they played throughout the 2000s, but Green Bay, Dallas is a big one. Not sure who Phil is. Pittsburgh's obviously a team that's been in there for, they've been there since the beginning of the league. We got Cleveland and Houston, so you got some newer teams, but then you got some modern teams, and it's a really interesting dynamic. Now, all these teams aren't going to get in, of course. Like the Texans might not get in. I think they will, but I'm going to go into that next. But anyway, because of the modern retro type deal we're getting, I think the Steelers game is going to go under. It's at like 34.5, which is pretty low. The Ravens are going to have backups in. I think it's going to be your traditional Week 18 backup beatdown where, you just have the team with all the starters that needs a win to get in the playoffs. Give a complete prison pounding to the team that... And by prison pounding, I don't think they're going to win like 40-0. But I think the Ravens are probably going to get like 2 field goals all game. It'll probably be like a 14-6 type game. Like I think it's going to be very low scoring. So I love the under, and I like the Steelers for the cover. And again, the Texans is my favorite play of the week. There's a lot of these that I could see some of these matchups switching. Like the ones I have currently tell some amazing stories that I'm going to go into. But I personally, I do like Jacksonville more than Pittsburgh. I think they're more of a draw, but I kind of went deep into the WWE booking and stumbled upon this, so we're going to stick with this, and I'm going to show you why. Now, Texans-Colts, look how beautiful this playoff picture is, and then just blink, and now look at it. It just got a lot uglier, didn't it? And I just don't think... Oops, I gave him a tie. There you go. So I just don't think this is what we're going to get. I don't think we're going to waste a Joe Flacco story on, again, this guy. The only reason I even know Gardner Minshew as well as I do, as far as like remember him and what team he's on, because a lot of these backups I forget. They shift them around so quick. One week they're great, the next week they're garbage. The only reason I know this guy's face so well is because he does. He looks like the third member of the Young Bucks. Every time I see this guy, he looks like a blend of Matt and Nick Jackson, and that's the only thing about this team that I even think about when I think of the team. I think of the Young Bucks because of Gardner Minshew Buck. But I had someone bring up Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. I'm sorry, but if they're your draws, that's just not going to be enough. To me, this is much more beautiful. And someone brought up this comment, and they went into a bunch of different narratives, and I don't think we have the exact same teams. But for a lot of them, we do have the same teams and narratives. We have Miami playing Kansas City because of Hill versus Mahomes. And I know I want to give him credit for this because I would love to take credit for it myself, but it was not my idea. Cleveland playing Houston would give us the oldest and the youngest quarterback. I think that's a great draw. They're already talking. Flacco's already made 2 comments about, I could be these guys' dads. And, they're making it seem like this guy is like 50 years old. There's quarterbacks that have played older, but they're giving Flacco the old guy gimmick, which is fine. Everyone needs a gimmick. So who better to go up against him than the youngest quarterback in the NFL? I think that's an amazing narrative. So for that to happen, you can see this doesn't matter, this Browns-Bengals game. And since the Bengals are like 6-point favorites, I like the Bengals. So, yeah, I think this has so much more appeal than this. I just think this is so ugly. ESPN would not want to post it on their own page. Sorry to any Colts fans. It's just they are. I feel like they're like off-white paint, just very, very bland as far as any kind of appeal. Now, Bucks, Panthers, this one does have ramifications. If the Panthers win, as you'll see, now this is also assuming that the Falcons win. The Falcons would actually get in the playoffs with a losing record, which was my prediction all year long. I predicted that the winner of the NFC South was going to have a losing record. And preseason, I said that team was going to be Carolina. I'm not going to lie. If you watch back, you'll see that. But I want to say by like week 4, it was when Dion Fever was catching. You know, I caught Dion Fever, and I thought, you know what if all of his teams made the playoffs? And obviously they can't all make the playoffs at this point. But all the teams that he technically played for could make the playoffs because he never played for the Commanders. So it would be interesting. So I thought about it. The line's very fishy with the Bucks as well. So again, do I just stay stubborn and have the Panthers and Falcons win to fit my preseason prediction of a team with a losing record getting in? Or do I shift it up so we get a more obvious, or not more obvious, I'm sorry, but a more appealing draw like the Bucks versus the Eagles or maybe the Saints? Well, I'm going to change it just because, again, I think they want to give us a pretty entertaining playoffs, and we already have the Packers and the Rams getting in. I don't see why you would add the Falcons to that mix and have 3 teams out of the NFC, just very boring teams. Again, I don't think too many Rams, especially since the Rams just won it, I don't see too many people eager for the Rams. The Packers, they probably, will get a little bit of love as like an underdog, but the Lions are getting the love out of the NFC North. So I just don't see why you would soil it by putting the Falcons in there. They're kind of like the Colts of the NFC. Very boring team. But I think if they win and the Bucks win, that makes sense because the Bucks would just eke in with barely a winning record. And Bucks-Eagles, to me, is a much better draw. Of all the teams, players in the NFC South, all year long, Baker has been treated like he belongs in the playoffs, whereas the other quarterbacks have not. Other players in general in the NFC South, the Bucks have been treated like a playoff team still. So I don't think it's going to be the Falcons. It could be the Saints. I don't think it's going to be both either. That's why I don't have. Now you can see even if the Saints win, they wouldn't get in. If the Bucks win, if the Panthers and Saints win, they would. But it'd be hard for either of these teams for them both to get in anyway. But I still have the Falcons winning the game. And yeah, I don't see a circumstance like the Packers would have to lose, which they could actually. The Packers could definitely lose, but we'll go into that in a second. So without getting ahead of ourselves, I like the Bengals. And again, when I upload all the covers and over-unders, I'll upload the Sunday picks. I just wanted to cover Saturdays since that's coming up. Covers, which is going to be against Steelers. I like them for the cover. I think they're going to cover. Texans, basically a pick 'em, like them to cover. And the Steelers under. Those are our 3 plays. Well, the Steelers, Ravens under. And I'll go into the money line of the Bucks, Panthers, the Bengals, because a lot of these games I think we're going to get a couple of them where we get the win but not the cover. Now, I do have a lot of dogs too, so that's another reason why I'm mostly doing money lines because a lot of these teams are dogs. But I'll have the official covers anyway, as I always put out exactly, the cover, the unit amounts, all that stuff. But I just wanted to, again, just kind of give people a visual of the playoff picture. So, if the Lions win, you see not much changes here. But then if the Niners win, a lot does change. We have to get Rams, Lions. There's no way they're not giving us that. So, basically, it's either going to be, I think it's going to be Vikings win, I do, because it keeps them alive for the playoffs. They could actually get in. If the Vikings win, they could actually make it into the playoffs. They need a few things to happen. But you see they can get in with a Bears win. So it would make that game much more interesting. I believe that's a 4 o'clock. Yeah, that's a 4 o'clock game. The Vikings is a 1 o'clock game. So in my opinion, no reason to eliminate the Vikings after they came back from 0-4. It would be the biggest playoff comeback of all time. So I do think they're going to beat the Lions. It's also a suspicious spread. And again, if it kind of fits every narrative because it also checks the box of ensuring the Rams would play the Lions. If the Lions win, then a Niners win would actually match up, though, a very ugly matchup. It would give us two ugly matchups: Packers Lions, which nobody wants to see a third time, and Rams Cowboys. And then you got Eagles. There's not one draw coming out of the NFC if that happens. That's why I think it's imperative that the Rams and Lions match up. Now, this is the way I think it happens. I think the Vikings win. Again, it keeps them alive for when the Bears play the Packers. And then it also keeps the Lions playing the Rams. So I like the Vikings to win a lot. I think originally I liked the Lions until I was going through the playoff simulation and realized it made much more sense for the Vikings to win this game. Patriots, Jets. I do like the Patriots. I just think this way the Jets, you'll see they finish with 6-11 record. They'll be getting a top 10 pick. I think like the 9th pick, something like that. So the Patriots are already getting a top 3 pick, top 5 pick. I think the Patriots will probably get the 3rd pick if I'm not mistaken. No, they'll be 5-12. Yeah, they still might get the 3rd or 4th pick. So it just depends. But either way, Patriots aren't getting Caleb. That was my theory. That's out the window. And I think just giving the Jets a good pick, they're going to have Rodgers going in the next year. Then they're going to have this new pick. I think it makes a lot of sense to give them a good pick. So give the Patriots the win there. And it continues the streak of the Patriots, I think. I don't think the Jets have beaten them in quite a while, especially in New England. Falcons, Saints, I'm sticking with the Falcons just because even though nothing really changes, I think that they want the division to look as pathetic as possible. And basically all of them having losing records outside of the Bucs, who barely eke in, seems very fitting of that division. Now, Titans-Jags is an interesting one because, as you can see, right now we have 3 interesting matchups. And I'm going to go into them all in a second. I already went into Hill and Mahomes like multiple times before the season, and it looks like that's what we're going to get. But if the Jags were to win this, then it would officially boot the Steelers, kind of prematurely, but it would boot the Steelers, and we'd get Jags, Browns, Chiefs, Dolphins, and Bills. Pretty good matchups. Nothing crazy. That I could see this happening, but I must admit, I think this is much more appealing. I think, and the reason I think it's more appealing is they all have really cool stories interwoven within them, and they're all connected in a way. So, on top of that, they're all draws. The Jags are probably a slightly bigger draw than the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I still think the Steelers have a nice story here with Buffalo, and a lot of people probably already know the Pittsburgh-Buffalo connection. So, Seattle, Arizona. I like Arizona because, again, not much will change, but Seattle at this point, they're basically, if the Vikings win, then the Seahawks will basically be mathematically eliminated. Doesn't make much sense for them to win. And with the Cardinals win, then they would finish 5-12, and I believe the Patriots would get the better pick in the draft. I'm not sure who gets the tiebreaker or how, but when I was looking at mock drafts, even though they had the same record over and over, they would show the Patriots with a higher pick than the Cardinals. So anyway, I think more people are going to be on Seattle. I do not think Seattle gets in the playoffs. I think even teasing them doesn't even make sense. I just don't think they have the same draw factor as, say, the Vikings, who, again, the Vikings would be waiting on this Bears game. And I think they eliminated Seattle long ago when they replaced them at the Rams, and it was abundantly obvious. Last year they pretended the Rams sucked. I went into this, and then suddenly this year they were playing good again as Geno started fizzling out, and that's like even before the Rams had a playoff berth. They were like a game behind. I had predicted they were going to flip Seattle, so I think Seattle finishes the season off pretty bad here. And then we got Packers-Bears. As I went into, this game's got ramifications because if the Bears win, the Vikings would get in instead of the Packers, which is an interesting story. And then if the Packers win, they get in. And I've liked the Bears because I've gone into how they've basically won almost every game since CM Punk returned. I think it would make sense for them to finish the season strong. All that being said, I like the Packers here. I think Packers-Cowboys is a very retro matchup, and I think it'd be very interesting. I mean, it'd be something the NFL would do as well to keep the Vikings that close, just to pull the rug. And you could argue the Vikings are a slightly bigger draw, and maybe with Dalvin Cook joining the Ravens, there's something there. Of course, I doubt those teams match up against each other. I don't think the Vikings get in, though. I think you give it to the Packers, you give it to Love, give him a matchup against Dallas, give him, be his breaking in, I guess, Dallas cremating him. But yeah, I think the Packers will end the Vikings fairy tale. But I do think the Vikings win because, again, it makes this Bears game immensely more appealing. And I did like the Bears at first. A few people were saying to me that, they think Love's going to get in the playoffs, and I agree with them, and he needs to win for that to happen. So I do like the Packers to win this game. Chiefs, Chargers, I like the Chargers. I went into this in my video. I just think the Chiefs finishing the season 10-7, which is a pretty bad record. If you remember, Nick Wright predicted they'd go 17-0. They always like to do those little teases, so they could finish with an inverse of that number. At the same time, they would just look weak, and whether they lose in the first round and then they decide, okay, we need some receivers, or they make a run all the way to the AFC Championship, making them look weak is still the way to go, because then it'll be, oh man, Mahomes is carrying this team, or it's going to be, they get destroyed in the first round maybe with an upset victory, and we get the narrative, okay, well they need more than just Mahomes. Either way, I don't see them losing in the first round, but I think they're going to underwhelm people. But heading into the playoffs with a loss, losing, what would it be, 3 of the last 4 games or something, 4 of the last 5, something that they've never done, I think makes a lot of sense. Raiders, Broncos does not matter either way. We're just going to go with the Raiders because I think there's going to be slightly more people on the Broncos because they're slightly less disappointing of a team. But it's not a game I'd go out of my way to play. Eagles-Giants doesn't make much of a difference. If the Eagles... Actually, I believe, let me see. Yeah, the Cowboys would have to lose, and the Eagles would have to win, and we can get a flip. But it's just not going to happen, I don't think. I think it's going to be they both win, look pretty impressive. Because they're both, theoretically, fighting for, higher seeds and such. So the starters should be in. I don't see why. Now, yeah, you can get the 2nd seed to the 5th seed. So I imagine both teams are going to. It's not going to be like a case like with the Ravens or Niners where they don't need to play their starters. We should see these guys playing pretty good football, which kind of fits my narrative of the Niners finishing the season not too memorable. They got beat pretty bad by the Ravens, then they came back, beat the Commanders, and then this week they're not playing their starters. If you have Hurts and Dak finish off looking really, really good, then it's going to put more of that doubt in people's mind about Brock Purdy, in my opinion. So I like the Eagles, I like the Cowboys, and I like the Rams, actually. If we get the Niners, it flips things up a little bit. And again, I just don't see Green Bay, Detroit. And even if that team is Minnesota, I don't see Minnesota, Detroit. It doesn't make sense to me. What makes sense is Goff versus Stafford on different teams. I can already see, I brought this up, the 2008 side-by-side where they showed both of these guys when they were young guns. Yeah, I'm sure they already have it printed out ready to put on their channel or put on their website. I can already, they've done this a million times. They do it with basketball a lot. Like, 2008, back in 2008, this is how much has changed. And I don't know what year it was when these guys were drafted, but they were drafted not too far apart, I believe. I know Stafford's older, but I don't think, I know Goff's not exactly a young guy, so at least by NFL standards. So yeah, I think you have to have this matchup. It's a perfect first round matchup. Rams, Lions. Lions are playing the, quote, former Super Bowl champs. And it's an interesting story where both quarterbacks are playing their former team. I don't think you could pass up on that. And the final game I wanted to go into, we got Bills-Dolphins. If Dolphins win, then we get this, which is still pretty good, I guess. I don't know if people would want to see Dolphins-Bills 2 weeks in a row. Cleveland, Houston, and then Pittsburgh, Kansas City. And then if the Bills win, Pittsburgh still gets in based off of this because I have the Jags losing. And I think this is what we get. So I think everything's going to happen for the, basically. Now the Jags, this I went into before too. I could have sworn that I read the Bills would not get in if the Jaguars, Steelers, and who's the third one? Jaguars, Steelers, and Texans. If they all won, I swear they said the Bills would not get in. But as you see, they are in. All they have to do is win. And if they lose, they don't get in. But I swear it said they would have to win with some help. But maybe I read it wrong. But yeah, if they were to lose and all three of these teams win, then they would not get in. Which again, they could do. I just don't think they will. I don't think they're going to jeopardize the playoffs to do one shock factor. I think it makes much more sense that we get this, to be honest. And I'm going to go into why I specifically like these matchups, because at first I did like Jacksonville. So here's our money line picks. Like again, I'm going to have all of our covers out probably tomorrow. That's why I went into today's covers already, or Saturday's covers already. I'll have all Sunday's covers out tomorrow. I just wanted to go into more of a visual so people can see all of our plays. A lot of these are underdogs anyway, so here's another, not a lot of them. If I have them winning, of course I have them covering. But anyway, I want to go into our matchup. So for the NFC side, because it's not as interesting as the AFC side, we'll start there. Packers, Cowboys, I think is a great wild card matchup. It's like of yesteryear. And again, I just don't see Seattle drawing. I think you already have a couple teams that aren't much of draws, like the Rams, the Bucks. So the Packers makes sense to me more than the Seahawks. Again, it could be the Vikings, but I think it's going to be the Green Bay Packers. And Packers, Cowboys have played each other a million times in the playoffs. So they can kind of give Love Love can get his breaking in, if you will, playing the Cowboys. Then we got the obvious one, Rams, Lions. And again, for this to happen, the Lions can't win. Well, they can, but if the Niners were to win as well, then it changes things up drastically, which we won't get this. So basically, I like the Vikings, Rams, but if the Lions win, then I really like the Rams, because the Lions win, the Rams have to win to match up against the Lions. And I just think we're definitely going to get Goff versus Stafford. So it's a contingency game where, again, if the Lions do beat the Vikings, I like the Rams even more. But either way, I think the Rams win and I think the Vikings win, just to keep things interesting. And yeah, I think they're going to show us a million different pictures of these guys on their former teams and how it's the first time since maybe the first time ever, if you're talking this long apart. It's an interesting story. They're definitely going to give us that. And then Philly, Tampa, I think it makes sense. I think Tampa's a fine casualty team. Sure, it could be the Saints. It really doesn't matter. They're going to get beat pretty bad by Philly, so I don't think that, it matters who's in this spot. There's not much of a story here. Again, the NFC South is pretty boring, pretty bad. It could even be the Falcons. Maybe I'm right. My preseason prediction comes true, and the 8-9 Falcons get in. But I'm going to go with the Bucks. Maybe they give the Eagles a pretty close game. We already saw it this year, I'm pretty sure. But it's a wild card game. We're going to get some rematches. Now, the AFC side's way more interesting. And I'm going to just start with the reason I like Tennessee to win. It gives us DeMar versus Pittsburgh, which is a very interesting matchup. Obviously, when he got, his injury, whatever you want to call it, his heart attack is what it officially was, they were talking about, Pittsburgh, and they showed a lot of Pittsburgh a lot of pictures when he was with Pitt, a lot of his college. I think Pitt came out and made announcements too, but people were really honing in on Pitt at the time. And then Franco, around the same time, he died. So a lot of weird stuff going on in the AFC. And another reason I like Pittsburgh is the AFC North almost has, like, for all three teams that in the AFC North, they've all had a death. So the Steelers had Franco Harris, the Browns had Jim Brown, and the Baltimore had like 9 of them. But they, most notably, we had Saragusa and Ray Lewis, his son. So it's really interesting. That's one of the reasons I do think the Steelers get in. I think it's kind of like a weird sacrifice. We've had the 3 deaths coming out of the AFC North teams. Just very interesting. So then you tie it in with DeMar. I think Pittsburgh-Buffalo makes a lot of sense here. So that's why I wound up going with Tennessee beating Jacksonville, because it'll give us this nice little matchup. And I don't think Jacksonville's that much of a draw anyway. And leaving Trevor out in the cold, I don't think is going to make much of a difference in the long term. I just... The push he gets is very inorganic, and I don't even know if he's going to stick, to be quite honest. So I could definitely see them fizzling out. And the line's kind of sketchy, to be honest, as well. So there's a lot of things. I'm not even sure if Trevor's back. I know he was hurt. So it just seems like they kind of pulled the plug on the team. Steelers kind of getting a run at the end of the season. It would be interesting if the Jags won, only because then the Steelers, the very first game, would be waiting on the very last game, Bills, to determine if they got in or not, which would be an interesting dynamic. But again, I don't think they're going to care that much about it. These games are going to be as entertaining as they want them to be anyway. But the Steelers will have to sweat it out a little bit, at least until the Titans game happens. So yeah, I think this makes more sense than the Jags. So this is a change. Like I said in my last video, nothing was concrete. And just looking at it, I think it makes much more sense that we get DeMar versus Buffalo. So anyway, the reason, again, I went into the Cardinals, I think they make sense, and all these other teams. Now, Kansas City, Miami's obvious. They're going to match up, it seems like, almost no matter what. The Dolphins could win and throw a wrinkle into the plans. But again, this just looks way more boring, in my opinion. Now we're getting, again, for the 2 weeks in a row, Bills, Dolphins. I just don't think it makes much sense. I think this makes much more sense. Mahomes versus Hill in the playoffs. And now we have a great story of a quarterback, why he needs good receivers. And then Cleveland, Houston. I wish I could take credit for this theory. And again, I loved Houston to get in for a while now, just because it makes sense. But someone in my comments brought up, and I don't remember who it is, but it was on my last video going into the NFL, how we could get the oldest quarterback in the NFL versus the youngest. And I had gone into how they're giving Joe Flacco the old man gimmick, just showing him basically on the field with Moses. And it's an interesting gimmick, but it would be literally the oldest versus the youngest quarterback. They're pushing CJ, obviously, and you can already see them showing, what prices were like when Joe Flacco was quarterback versus now, or whatever stupid statistic they're going to use, or show us a picture of CJ, the ultrasound of CJ Stroud when Flacco's in the league. All these different things you could just imagine where their warped minds would go, but they're going to remind us that this is an old guy versus a young guy just because it's a great story. So I saw that comment. I wish I could take credit for it, but it was not my idea. But I do agree with it. I think it makes perfect sense that we get the Browns versus the Texans. And again, all this could be completely ruined, just like Smash Your Van Gogh painting, if you have the Colts win this game. It ruins everything. And that's the reason I just don't think the Colts can win this game. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I think it's got to be the Texans. So yeah, here's all of our money line picks. Like I said, a lot of these are underdogs anyway, but for the ones that aren't, I'm going to have an official, like I said, I'll just re-upload it because I put it on my membership services. I'm going to have our exact covers, how many units they'll be worth, and the over-unders for all the games. Like I said, for the Steelers, nothing fancy there. I'm just taking the under. That's going to be for 2 units, in case you didn't know. For the Steelers, I have them covering. That's going to be for 1 unit. And my Texans cover, you probably could guess, is going to be a leg 3 for 4 units. So we got a leg 1, a leg 2, and a leg 3 in those 3 games. And they're just in the order I like them. I like the Steelers to cover a good bit. I really like the under. And for the Texans-Colts, it's my favorite game of the weekend. So, of course, that's going to be a leg 3-er. So those are the official picks for tomorrow. Like I said, I'll have all the official covers and the unit amounts for Sunday coming out tomorrow. But I really wanted to go into this because I had noticed... Well, I thought, for a minute, if like I said, the Steelers, Jags, and Texans won, the Bills wouldn't get in, but that's just not true. As long as they win, they get in. So they can have whatever they want happen, and then it all comes down to Sunday night. And sure, they could make them not, they could kick them out, because then you would have, well, even that wouldn't do it. I think the Jags would have to win. You could kick them out because then you would have the story of the Bills not making it, and you got Diggs who's complaining. You got a couple things going on, but I don't think you're going to ruin the playoffs, just in my opinion, and take away one of the biggest draws just for that sake. Again, Lawrence isn't a giant draw, so him not getting in is fine. That makes sense to me. You put the Steelers in, their defense have been pushed all year. And again, I just like the DeMar-Pittsburgh connection. That's the reason I wound up settling on Pittsburgh instead of the Jags getting in. So yeah, I I do think the Bills get in. Maybe they get beat in the first round or something, and then Diggs wants to trade. I think no matter when they get beat, Diggs is going to want to trade. But I think I think they're going to want to give us Bills Chiefs again. I could be wrong, but it just kind of like the Brady Manning. It's their go-to move. When they want to put on a good match. Okay, get Josh Allen and Mahomes and make something happen. So yeah, again, we'll go into who's going to win these matchups, of course, in when these games are official. But this is what I think is going to be our official playoffs. So you can let me know what you think. And yeah, I didn't forget about the hue of the Super Bowl logo. It's brought up on like every video of mine. I know someone on TikTok put it out like for the last 5 years. The teams have matched up with the Super Bowl logo, and it is pretty irrefutable. And it's not like It's not like it's like red and blue. It's like very specific colors. Like it was burnt orange and magenta the year we had the Rams playing the Bengals. Last year it was like that greenish red, obviously for the Eagles and Chiefs. And this year it's like a purplish red. Somebody told me that was because it was a foregone conclusion the Vikings were going to win the Super Bowl, and I didn't know what I was talking about. But obviously it doesn't look like the Vikings are going to make the playoffs. They could sneak in, like I said, they are still alive, which is interesting. But I think they're just going to give Love his due, just what I think. But yeah, you never know. Maybe it is the Vikings. But yeah, the Ravens seem to fit the color scheme the best, and then it's some kind of red team. So unless you think we're going to see Ravens Bucks, if the logo's hue is going to be the truth again, it looks like our preseason pick, Ravens Niners, is looking pretty strong still. But again, I'll go into all that, and I'll have all of our exact. Again, this week's a little different because there's so many games that I'm not picking based off of metrics for the most part. I'm just picking based off of who I think they will and won't allow into the playoffs. And since I think the Colts just are immediately disqualified for being the Colts, and some of these other teams just don't make any sense, it makes it a lot easier to make the picks. And again, it helps because a lot of our picks are underdogs. Not a lot of them, but a good bit. So obviously, if I have an underdog winning, of course I have them covering. So that's why I wanted to go into this graphic here and see what you guys thought. If you think, the NFC South's the only one I'm really, so I'm 100% open to like a complete flip. The other one's not as much, like Green Bay. I'm pretty sure they're going to get in. And Jacksonville's the other one. Again, by my own logic, they should get in over Pittsburgh. I just think the Tomlin getting to the playoffs again after not being there for a while makes sense. They're talking about them possibly getting Fields, so it would make sense to get them in there for that reason. And I'm not saying they're going to get Fields, but it would make sense. And again, I like the commonality of every team in there from the AFC North had an interesting death last year. So I like all the commonalities, and I think Bills, obviously DeMar playing his college team, is very interesting. So yeah, like I said, it won't be long, and I'll have all the covers out for anyone that's just tailing picks, or tailing exact unit amounts. And I wanted to go into this at the beginning, actually, but I wasn't thinking of it. I'm thinking it'll be Sunday. You guys can let me know what day is best. I do plan on doing a live video. My last live video, I can't make this up. We were talking about the Bulls logo and how upside down it looked like an alien. And then we were talking about aliens for a second, and then my feed got cut, and I couldn't get back in. Like, it just went silent. I can't make it up. I'm not saying it was the aliens, but something cut my feed. But I do have better equipment now. I've tested it, and it's much better headset. I still have the same archaic laptop, but I figured out how like the webcam app works a little better. So yeah, let me know. I thought Bills Dolphins would be the best game to do it for. It's such a ridiculous game. It's going to be so WWE like. But if you guys wanted to do it for a different game, just let me know. I might do like a poll or something, see what time is best. But yeah, I thought that would be a really fun game to go live. And yeah, that is what happened last time we went live. We were talking about aliens and kind of got shut down. It was kind of interesting timing, but I do have horrible equipment, so that's why it happened, to be completely honest. So I got like a slightly better headset and figured out the webcam app I was working a little more. So yeah, this is who I think we get. And again, I love the tale of, and I saw it in the comments, so whoever saw it first, congratulations, good catch. But Flacco versus CJ, great story. They're really pushing him as the old guy too. Like, he's standing up and his knees are achy. He's got the gray beard, just like everything that the middle-aged quarterback has. That they want us to know Flacco's no young gun. He's no spring chicken. So, yeah, I think these matchups make the most sense. And here's our official money line picks for Saturday and Sunday. And for the ones that, again, like, will the Eagles cover? Will the Cowboys cover? All these different ones where it could be a win, no cover. Bengals, I think they're laying like 6 points. I'll go into all the exact covers and stuff. They might not all, of course. Our covers might be a little different. For the most part, though, we have dogs. We have a lot of dogs, more dogs than usual. So, of course, I'm going to have them covering. And I'll add our over-unders as well. But I thought I know a few people were asking me to do like an exact playoff simulator. Someone even sent me this link to use, so I appreciate it. It's a good one. I like how it updates the pictures each week. And yeah, I think this is a very good, considering what we have left in the NFL, a very good matchup for the playoffs. And again, if you took one thing away from this video, there's no way in hell the Colts are getting in. So I would put the load on the Texans. But as far as all the games, here's who I like. So take care and happy earnings.